Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm back. I just 2 minutes ago finished with my second class of the day, and I want to give a big shout out to my friends in 3B. We had Kareem, Nada, Nadine, Ahmed Habib. Who else was there? Who was with me today? Abdurrahman. Who else stayed? Zahra, Rance Vance. They stayed and they were talking to me after class. We were having a nice chat and I had a good laugh, and I decided to come and read some more Gangsta Granny because they are enjoying it, and inshallah so are you. So when we left off, Ben has figured out that Granny is not what she appears. She's been up to no good. She was about to smash a tin of cabbage soup through a jeweler's window, and he stopped her. He was shocked. When we left off, he was like, "Brah, what are you doing, Granny?" And she was like, "What are you doing here?" So let's figure out what happened next. Chapter 9 is entitled The Black Cat. Ben stared at his granny as she stood by the jeweler's shop, dressed all in black. "Ben," she prompted, what are you doing following me? Ben was so shocked he couldn't form a sentence. "Well," she said, "whatever you're doing here, you'll have the cops on us in no time. We'd better get out of here, quick! Jump on!" "But I can't, Ben. We've got about 30 seconds before that CCTV camera comes on." She pointed to a camera screwed to the wall of an apartment block next to the row of shops. Ben jumped on the back of her mobility scooter. "You know when the CCTV cameras come on?" he asked. "Oh," said Granny, "you'd be surprised by what I know." Ben looked at her back as she drove. He'd just seen her preparing to rob a jeweler's shop. How could he be more surprised? Clearly there was a lot more to his granny than he had ever known. "Hold on," said Granny, "I'm going full throttle." She violently twisted the handle of the scooter to absolutely no effect that Ben could feel. They hummed off in the dark, going about 3 miles per hour with the increased weight. "The black cat?" repeated Ben. They were finally back sitting in Granny's living room. She had made a pot of tea and laid out some chocolate biscuits. "Yes, that's what they called me," replied Granny. "I was the most wanted jewel thief in the world." Ben's head was exploding with a million questions. Why? Where? Who? What? When? It was impossible to know what to ask first. "No one else knows except you, Ben," continued Granny. "Even your granddad went to his grave not knowing. Can you keep a secret?" "You have to swear not to tell a soul." "But—" Granny's face looked fierce for a moment. Her eyes narrowed and darkened like a snake about to bite. "You have to swear," the old lady said with an intensity Ben had never witnessed before. "Us criminals take our oaths very seriously. Very seriously indeed." Ben gulped, a little scared. "I swear not to tell anyone." "Not even your mother and father," barked Granny, nearly spitting out her false teeth in the process. "I said I swear not to tell anyone," barked back Ben. Ben had been learning about Venn diagrams in school recently, as he had sworn not to tell anyone, and let's say that anyone is set A, then Mom and Dad are obviously in set A, and of course a subset of it, so there was really no need for Granny to ask Ben to swear a second time. "Take a look at this handy diagram." But Ben didn't think his granny would be interested in Venn diagrams right now. She was still staring at him with those scary eyes. He sighed and said, "All right, I swear not to tell Mom and Dad." "Good boy," said Granny as her hearing aid began to whistle. On one condition," ventured Ben. "What's that?" said Granny, seeming a little startled by his nerve. "You have to tell me everything." Chapter 10. Everything. "I was about your age when I stole my first diamond ring," said Granny. Ben was astonished, partly at the idea that Granny had ever been his age, which seemed impossible, and partly because of the obvious fact that 11-year-old girls do not usually steal diamonds. Glitter pens, hair clips, toy ponies maybe. Diamonds, definitely not. "I know you look at me with my Scrabble and my knitting and my fondness for cabbage and think I am just some boring old dear." "No," said Ben, not entirely convincingly. "But you forget, child, that I was young once." "What was the first ring you stole?" said Ben eagerly. "Did it have a really big diamond on it?" The old lady chuckled. Not so big. No, it was my first one. I've still got it somewhere. Go into the kitchen, will you, Ben, and fetch the Silver Jubilee biscuit tin from the shelf. Ben shrugged as if he knew nothing about the Silver Jubilee biscuit tin and its incredible contents. Whereabouts is it, Granny? Asked Ben as he left the living room. Just on top of the larder boy, called Granny. Chop, chop, your mummy and daddy will be wondering where you are soon. Ben remembered that he had wanted to rush home for cheesy beans and sausage. Suddenly, that seemed colossally unimportant. He wasn't even feeling hungry anymore. Ben re-entered the room holding the tin. It was even heavier than he remembered. He passed it to his granny. Good boy, she said as she rummaged through the tin and picked out a particularly beautiful sparkler. Ah, yes, this is it. To Ben, all the diamond rings looked pretty much the same. However, Granny seemed to know each of them as if they were her oldest friends. Such a little beauty, she said as she brought the ring up to her eye for closer inspection. This is the first one I stole, back when I was a nipper. Ben couldn't imagine what Granny would have been like young. He had only ever known her as an old lady. He even imagined she had been born an old lady. That years ago in the hospital when her mother had given birth and asked the midwife if it was a boy or a girl, the midwife might have replied, "It's an old lady." I grew up in a small village and my family was very poor, continued Granny. And up at the top of the hill was this grand country house where a lord and lady lived, Lord and Lady Davenport. It was just after the war and we didn't have much food in those days. I was hungry, so one night at midnight, when everyone was asleep, I crept out of my mother's and father's little cottage. Under the cover of darkness, I made my way up through the woods and up the hill to Davenport House. Weren't you scared? Asked Ben. Yes, of course I was. Being alone in the dark woods at night, it was terrifying. There were guard dogs at the house, great big black Dobermans. So as quietly as I could, I climbed a drain pipe and found an unlocked window. I was a very little girl at 11, small for my age, so I managed to squeeze myself through a tiny gap in the window and landed behind a velvet curtain. When I pulled back the curtain, I realized I was in Lord and Lady Davenport's bedroom. Oh no, said Ben. Oh yes, continued the old lady. I thought I might just take some food perhaps, but next to the bed I saw this little beauty. She indicated the diamond ring. So you just took it? Being an international jewel thief is never that simple, young man, said Granny. The lord and lady were snoring heavily, but if I woke them, I'd be dead. The lord always slept with a shotgun by the bed. A shotgun? Asked Ben. Yes, he was posh, and being posh, he liked hunting pheasants, so he owned many guns. Ben was sweating with nerves. But he didn't wake up and try to shoot you, did he? Be patient, young man, all in good time. I crept over to Lady Davenport's side of the bed and picked up the diamond ring. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. I had never seen one up close before. My mother would never have dreamed of owning one. I don't need jewels, she said to us children. You are my little diamonds. I wondered at the diamond in my hand for a moment. It was the most gorgeous thing I had ever seen in my life. Then suddenly, there was an almighty noise. Ben frowned. What was it? Lord Davenport was a big, fat, greedy man. He must have had too much to eat earlier because he let out the most enormous burp. Ben laughed and Granny laughed too. He knew burps weren't supposed to be funny, but he couldn't help laughing. It was so loud, said Granny, still chuckling. Burp, she mimicked. Ben was helpless with laughter now. It was so loud, continued Granny, that I was startled and dropped the ring on the polished wooden floor. It made quite a bang as it hit the teak, and both Lord and Lady Davenport woke up. Oh no! Oh yes. So I grabbed the ring and ran back to the open window. I didn't dare look behind me as I could hear Lord Davenport cocking his shotgun. I leapt down onto the grass, and all of a sudden the lights in the house came on and the dogs were barking and I was running for my life. Then I heard a deafening sound. Another burp? Asked Ben. No, a gunshot this time. Lord Davenport was shooting at me as I ran down the hill and back to the woods. Then what happened? Granny looked at her little gold watch. My dear, you had better head home. Your mummy and daddy will be worried sick. I doubt it, said Ben. All they care about is stupid ballroom dancing. That's not true, said Granny unexpectedly. You know they love you. I want to hear the end of the story, said Ben, frustrated. He was desperate to know what happened next. You will, another day, but Granny. Ben, you have got to go home. That's not fair. Ben, you must leave now. I can tell you what happened, but when you come on another day. But, to be continued, she said. Chapter 11, Cheesy Beans and Sausage. Ben sped home on his bike, not even noticing his burning legs and aching chest. He was going so fast he thought the police might give him a speeding ticket. As the wheels raced round, so did his mind. Could his boring old granny really be a gangsta? A gangsta granny? That must be why she liked books about gangsta so much. She was one. He slid through the door just as the familiar Strictly Stars Dancing theme tune blasted out from the living room. He had made it home just in time. But as Ben was about to disappear upstairs and pretend he had been in his bedroom doing his homework, his mom burst into the kitchen. "What are you doing?" she asked suspiciously. "You look very sweaty." "Oh, nothing," said Ben, feeling very sweaty. "Look at you," she continued as she approached him. "You are sweating like a pig." Ben had seen a few pigs in his life, and none of them had been sweating. In fact, pig fans everywhere will tell you that pigs don't even have sweat glands, so they can't sweat. Wow, this book is actually very educational. "I'm not sweating," Ben protested. Being accused of sweating made him sweat even more. "You are sweating. Have you been out running?" "No," replied a now very sweaty Ben. "Ben, don't lie to me. I'm your mother," she said, pointing at herself, a false nail flying off into the air in the process. Her false nails came off a lot. Once Ben had even found one in his microwavable paella bolognese. "If you haven't been out running, Ben, then why are you sweating?" Ben had to think fast. The Strictly Stars Dancing theme tune was coming to an end. "I was dancing," he blurted out. "Dancing?" Mom didn't look convinced. Ben was no Flavio Flavioli, and of course he hated ballroom dancing. "Yes, well, I have changed my mind about ballroom dancing. I love it." "But you said you hated it," shot back an increasingly suspicious Mum. Many times. Only the other week you said you would rather eat your own bogies than watch that rubbish. Hearing you say that was like a dagger through my heart." Mom was becoming visibly upset at the memory. "I'm sorry, Mom, I really am." Ben reached out a hand to comfort her, and another false nail flew and fell onto the floor. "But now I love it, honestly. I was just watching Strictly through the crack in the door and copying all the moves." Mom beamed with pride. She looked as if her whole life suddenly had meaning. Her face turned strangely happy, yet sad, as if this was destiny. "Do you want to be a—" she took a deep breath— "professional dancer?" "Where's my cheesy beans and sausage, wife?" called Dad from the living room. "Shut your face, Pete!" Mom's eyes were wet with tears of joy. She hadn't cried so much since Flavio was kicked out of the show in week 2 last year. Flavio had been forced to partner Dame Rachel Prejudice, who was so podgy all he could do was drag her around the floor. "Well, Ben desperately searched for a way to get out of this one." "Yeah, that really wasn't it." "Yes, I knew it," cried Mom. "Pete, come in here a moment. Ben has got something he needs to tell you." Dad trudged in wearily. "What is it, Ben? You're not joining the circus, are you?" "My word, you are sweaty." "No, Pete," said Mom slowly and deliberately, as if she was about to read out the name of a winner at an awards ceremony. "Ben doesn't want to be a silly old plumber anymore." "Thank goodness for that," said Dad. "He wants to be—" Mom looked at her son. "Tell him, Ben." Ben opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Mom chimed in. "Ben wants to be a ballroom dancer." "Oh, there is a God!" exclaimed Dad. He looked up at the nicotine-stained ceiling as if he might catch a glimpse of the Divine One. "He was just practicing in the kitchen," jabbering Mom excitedly, "copying all the moves from the show." Dad looked into his son's eyes and shook his hand manfully. "That's wonderful news, my boy. Your Mom and me haven't achieved much in our lives, what with Mom being a nail polisher." "I am a nail technician, Pete," corrected Mom scornfully. "There is a world of difference, Pete. You do know that. Nail technician, sorry, and me just a boring old security guard because I am too fat for the police. The most excitement I've had all year was when I stopped a man in a wheelchair speeding out of the store with a tin of custard concealed under his blanket. But you becoming a ballroom dancer, well, this is just the greatest thing that's ever happened to us." "The very greatest," said Mom. "The very, very greatest," said Dad. "Really, it's the very, very, very greatest," said Mom. "Let's just agree it's extremely great," said Dad, irritated. "Only, I warn you, boy, it's not going to be easy. If you train 8 hours a day, every day for the next 20 years, you might just get on that TV show." "Maybe he can do the American version," explained Mom. "Oh, Pete, just imagine our boy a huge star in America." "Well, let's not jump the gun, wife. He's not won the British one yet." Right now we have to think about entering him for a junior competition. You're right, Pete. Gail told me there's one in the town hall just before Christmas. Crack open the sparkling juice, wife. Our son is going to be a champion. A naughty word exploded in Ben's head. How on earth was he going to get out of this? And that's enough for today, guys. So, our friend has discovered Granny is up to no good and has been since she was a child. And in his quest to make an excuse to his mom, he has told her that he wants to become a professional ballroom dancer. What do you think's gonna happen next, guys? What do you think happened in Granny's story? How did she survive Lord Davenport's pheasant gun? And what are we gonna find out next? We have so much left to go. I hope you're enjoying it, inshallah, and thank you so much for your lovely comments and subscriptions, and I hope to see you guys very soon, maybe even this very week if I get enough requests to continue. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Be well and have a great night. Bye, y'all.